All right, we're recording, and I'm back with Eric. I feel like that I was gonna say like multiple time guest, but I feel like that there's a great quote from the movie Hoosiers: "Friend for years, friend for tears." So I feel like you and I have done this enough that I could use that quote with you. Uh, yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no, this is awesome, and thanks for letting me use your work to talk to put on the podcast. I appreciate that too.
Sure.
Okay, you sent me a scene called The Argument.
Yep.
Before we get into the scene, you had laid it out in your software, Author on Fire software. So I just want to talk me through what's happening in this screenshot of your software.
Okay. So in this software, what I do is I define my scene with different tools. So I try to define where we are in space and time. So right now we're in a cemetery in Montreal,
Yeah, super
and
important
we're
for a book that skips around in time, which is good.
yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to keep track of time to make sure that, when I look at a movie or read a book, well, mostly movies, and I see that they're in the middle of the day, and the next scene, which is about 2 minutes later, the sun is set, it
Yeah,
just doesn't match.
yeah,
So I'm trying to make sure that the dates are correct and the time of the day is correct.
nice.
So that's that part here for keeping track of space and time.
Okay,
And then after that, I go to the emotional curve. So I'm trying to look at my protagonist.
yeah,
What does he feel right now, and what do I want my readers to feel when I'm writing this?
yeah,
So when I'm trying to look at my polarity shifts, it's just going from negative to positive, positive to negative,
yeah. It's
and then
nice.
I'm trying to look at the values at stake. So, this here is trust in
Perfect.
this scene here.
Yeah, and that's a good. I really like that because I like that your software that you've built is pushing you to think about kind of like how the emotions are rolling out and what the characters are risking in their relationship with each other. It's a really nice way to think of the scene. Okay, I'm gonna go to your
Yeah.
second slide here. All right, what do we got
Okay.
here?
So we've got here your tool, Jeff,
Oh, nice.
for the emotional roles in the scene. So I'm
Yeah,
looking at who's the vehicle. So it's David in this
yeah.
case here. So usually Roxanne is a engine character. In this
Hmm.
scene here, she's a hazard character.
Okay.
And so is Meg.
Yeah,
And you have Gabby and Tank. Tank is the dog. Well, actually, he's a wolf.
yeah,
Uh, and they're engines. They're trying to help him out. You
yeah,
know.
yeah. Pushing him to
So
become the best version of himself, which is
exactly.
very true
So
in the piece. Yeah,
then you have the story structure. So the way I set it up is you have your spark, your heat, your options, and then your wrap up. So the spark is what initiates the conflict.
okay,
So here, Roxanne has a tone that's very aggressive.
nice.
So if you look at the heat, it's the different scenes that you could see that brings up the tension. So there's tension in the group. He's being called names.
Yeah,
There's the stone angel that's ready to attack Roxanne. So in the cemetery, there's a gargoyle that's on top of the monument, and the gargoyle is there to be able to protect the Lambert family, the dead and the living. So he's ready to attack. And in the previous scene, David just had a fight with a tree. Yeah, a tree,
yeah,
believe it or
yeah.
not.
Yep.
And the gargoyle just stepped in and cut a root and protected David.
Mm.
So in this scene, you're going to see that the Stone Angel just reacts and David just tells him to back off.
Okay.
And then, we talked about it before. David has like a beast inside him that's trying to get out.
Yep.
We saw it in the fight scenes and everything. And now the beast wants to react to what Roxanne is saying. And he just tries to calm it down and saying, no, you're not getting out.
Yeah. So I like this because you're kind of listing out all of the beats that are going to bring about any kind of conflict in this
Eh,
in this scene, which
exactly.
is nice. Yeah.
And then there's the option. Will David run away from the conflict and hide and never see Roxanne again?
Hmm.
Or will he have it out with her, and, just have a fight with her,
Yeah.
verbally. So, and he might lose her forever if he does that.
Yep. Yeah. And
So,
there's a nice hint to love in the potential
yeah,
romance
eh,
in the story. Yeah.
exactly. And then there's always like the wrap up. They make up, they say that they're friends and everything's okay.
Okay.
So that's how I built my scene.
Are you doing this before or after you write the scene?
I'm doing this before.
Okay, so this is like your planning tool. You're like
Exactly.
using this to plan out the scene. Nice. Okay, and I know that your software like puts all of this together in a big chart for you,
Yes.
like all of the scenes. Nice. All right, we'll get to the scene in a minute. If anybody's like, Jeff, why are you talking about software? It's because I love Eric and I love the things that he builds. Where can people find them?
Listen, the website is called authoronfire.com.
Okay.
So you can find it there.
Yeah, go check it out. It's a great tool. Okay, now that I've thoroughly embarrassed you and pitched your stuff without asking, I didn't even ask if I could do that. I just did it. Let's
Thanks,
talk
man.
about the scene. So things that I love about what you wrote.
Yeah.
Actually, okay, before I go there, what are you hoping to talk about tonight? Because I have a feeling what I want to talk about is different than what you're hoping to talk about. So what are you hoping to talk about tonight?
Okay. Well, what I want to talk about is how to pass the emotions that the cast is having here to the readers.
Okay. So we want to talk about the same thing.
I think I've been listening to you a long time, and I
That's
think we're
that's right.
thinking alike now.
You spent too much time with me, man. We're too mind synced.
Yeah.
Okay, what's really great about the story so far that I don't want you to change? It's dialogue driven. I'm just going to scroll through as I say this so people who are watching on YouTube can kind of see it. If you're not watching on YouTube, this is and you're listening, it's like it's just the exchanges, every line back and forth between the characters. The dialogue is really strong. The character voices are very differentiated. Ooh, that's a hard word.
Yeah. Don't ask me to do it. I'm French.
Yeah, the character voices are unique and different. And Roxanne and Megan and Gabby and David all sound the same. You're doing a really great job with a big cast conversation. There's only one place where I don't know who's talking, so I always know who's speaking. It's really great. So you've done those things A plus. Excellent job. The dialogue drives the conflict. You're focusing on the exchanges between the characters, the give and take between the characters. You're not afraid of using body language as a utterance of a character, like just not letting the character speak, but just use the body language. Like right here, Roxanne shot a look. Sorry. Roxanne shot her a look that terrified poor Gabby. Right? That's Roxanne's exchange. Like that's what she says in between her and Gabby, which is fantastic. So dialogue's great. What I want to do to take this to the next level and to really engage the reader in that emotion is I want you to start varying the pace of the piece.
Okay.
So I know you know this because you and I have talked about this before, and we'll go through note by note so we can look at where I think this needs to happen. But you and I have talked about this, so I know you know this, but for anybody listening, exchanges between characters, especially if the exchanges are quick and short, make the piece move, right? It feels like it's moving faster. Blocks of prose, so like a 3 to 4 sentence paragraph, forces the reader to slow down, right? Right now, this is like 90% fast speed.
Yep.
Which is great. It's an argument. It needs to be fast speed. But there is a thing that happens, which is when we move at one speed too often, the reader adjusts and stops ignoring the speed, and it just becomes the normal speed. So
okay.
I know that you're big into jujitsu. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure this is true in jiu-jitsu as well, but when I played football and baseball and basketball, there's this thing called rabbit speed
Yep.
that we use in every, and I'm sure you use it in jiu-jitsu too. In baseball, it applied. I was a pitcher. It applied to pitching. You never threw all fastballs because it didn't matter how fast you threw the ball, right? Like you could throw the ball 92 miles an hour. If you just keep throwing the ball at 92 miles an hour, the batter will adjust
Exactly.
and they will get used to it and they will hit it. Right. So you'd throw two 92-mile-an-hour fastballs and then you throw a junk slow pitch that was like 60 because that would totally throw the batter off. And then you throw another 92 and the 90 in comparison to 60, the 92 felt like it was a cannon. Right. So varying that speed all the time keeps the batter on their toes. Same with football. Whenever we were like going, I played offensive line. So whenever we were going to block somebody, right, we would hit them right up front. And then there was a lot of pushing with your legs. So there's that initial impact and then chopping your legs to get them to push back. And it's the like moving from the standing to the fast push of the chopping throws them off balance. And that's what we want with our reader. We want them thrown off balance. Or like I wasn't a big basketball player, but my daughter is, and she talks about this all the time. When you have the ball and you're dribbling, you want to move a couple steps slow and then pop and break and go fast. So, and I'm sure it's the same with jiu-jitsu, right? Like you're not just going to come and hurl the same speed of move at somebody. You want to kind of slow, and then attack. Right. Like,
Exactly.
and it creates this. Yeah. So we need to do that with our dialogue as well. We need to be varying the speed a little bit. Now, 90% of this is in that fast speed, and I want to keep it in that fast speed. But what my notes are about is finding the places where you have real emotional connection and then throwing a change up and giving me a couple lines of prose to force the reader to slow down and then speed up again. There was always a joke when I was a preacher for a little while, and there was a video that used to go around that mocked preachers, which was hysterical and super true. And it was the preacher would say in the video, I'm talking fast, I'm telling the story, and I'm engaging you in the story, and I'm giving you all the details, and you're laughing along with me, and it's really, really fun. And now I'm coming up to a point, and when I get to the point, I'm going to slow down, and we're going to pause on it together. And now I'm talking about it again, and I'm telling another story, and it's really funny, and we're having a good time. And now I'm at my second point. Right. And there's that place in your story with emotions where you really want to start varying the speed by adding a couple lines of prose to slow down when you're making a big emotional point. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
You're hitting it out of the park.
Nice. All right. Well,
Yeah.
let's go note by note and we'll look at these places. So first off, this line just made me laugh. And I'm gonna read it because it's funny.
Yeah.
So you always have at the beginning of these chapters, if people who've been listening for a while, I think we've done 3 of these chapters on the podcast from this book.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so you always have this prologue to a chapter where it's these two people talking about, like, one person's telling the story and the other person's listening to the story. And I know it's a big reveal at the end of the book, which is exciting, and a very cool thing. So this one was funny though. So they're talking about how these 3 girls, there were fairies around them, but they didn't see them.
Exactly.
And then one of the characters says, so some creatures could be in this room right now and I wouldn't know it. Exactly. The writer looked to his right and his left. Are there any here now? Let's continue. I love that there's like no answer given. It made me laugh out loud. Anyway,
yeah,
it's nicely done. So here, I want you to start creating this kind of rabbit speed at the end of a segment. So the end of emotional turn or a topical turn. And here's a topical turn. They're talking about, he says, what are you doing here? Gabby says, we're worried about you. He says, let me guess, Judas looked away, keeping an eye on you. Tank looked up at him with his sad puppy dog eyes. Again, really nice, using a nonverbal character in the dialogue. Great. He did both. He's a good boy. Megan interjected, protecting the cub as she petted him on the head. Who cares how we got here? Would you mind explaining yourself? Roxanne asked. So explain what? He asked, unsure what they saw. So this is Roxanne is going to attack here.
Yeah.
Right? Right before she attacks, just give me a sentence or two sentences that give me their position, just to slow the reader down for a second before we launch into this attack. Does that make sense?
It does.
So Meg interjected, protecting the cub as she petted her head. The graveyard was cold, right? The wind beat against David's face. He didn't really want to have this conversation right now. And then, who cares how we got here? Would you mind explaining yourself? Roxanne asked. Explaining what? He said. Roxanne moved a little closer. Don't play dumb. I'm not. I'm trying to understand your question. You know very well what I'm asking, right? Like, so you can feel that now, like, after we get that little moment of pause, then we're going to go on the attack, and the attack feels much faster because we spent that moment breathing. Does that make sense?
It does.
How does that feel?
I'm hearing it, and I think that's great.
Okay, and it doesn't need to be a lot. One sentence.
Okay.
Like one sentence is all it needs to be.
Yeah, it makes a pause, and then you're ready to run again.
Yeah, so then you're ready to take off.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
There's another thing I want you to do to connect with the reader emotionally is to start giving me a little bit more body language. Now, it's going to slow down the exchanges just a touch, but a sentence here and a phrase there isn't going to do it so much that the reader will notice. So, for example, here you have, don't look at them. I'm the one talking to you. Did I do something wrong? How much blood did you lose? I don't know. And then I added, why do you care? It seems like your brain has been deprived. David frowned. Hello, do I have to spell it out for you? Is what you originally wrote.
Yeah.
To emphasize her, like, kind of more aggressive tone, just give me a line of body language. She put her hands on her hips and cocked her head at him. Hello, do I have to spell it out for you? Right? Again, we have an emotional tone here where she's like upping the emotional more. So connect me to that emotional tone by giving me that like body language for me to see. It's going to slow it down a touch, but not so much that the reader feels like it's dragging. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Here's another one where I want a little more body language. Oh, this isn't mad. Just wait till you see me mad. Then we'll have a real talk. It's not pretty when she gets mad, Gabrielle said. It's really nice that Gabrielle's a peacemaker in this. It's funny.
Oh, always.
Yeah, and you're doing a good job here of keeping all the voices engaged, which is really good because it's a 4-person conversation with 2 people kind of hanging back. And
it's even a little bit more than that because you have the dog that's there and you have the inner beast.
Yeah,
that always wants to get out. Yeah.
Wants to get out. Yeah, so you're doing a nice job of balancing those because you don't lose them. At the end, you kind of lose them, and we'll get to a note where I'm like, hey, I want them, but at the first, you do a really great job of balancing them out. She said it's not pretty when she gets mad. Gabrielle says, shh, Megan hushed. What do you want to say to me? Sorry would be a good start. So before that, what do you want to say to me? I just want you to add like David rolled his eyes. What do you want to say to me? To connect to me what do you want to say? Oh, what do you want me to say? Sorry, I was flipping those words. Dyslexia strikes again. What do you want me to say? Flipping, like, that can be read in several different ways, right? That could be him getting angrier. What do you want me to say? Right? David said, raising the tone of his voice, right? Or, what do you want me to say? David said with a sigh. Right? Or I had rolled his eyes. What do you want me to say? Right? Like, so in this emotional turn, help me translate how I hear that by giving me body language that displays the emotion he's having.
Yeah, and here rolling his eyes is great because the beast isn't out yet.
Yeah, he's just annoyed.
He's just annoyed. Exactly.
Yep. Yeah. And you make a good transition for when he's getting angry. I can tell in the way his dialogue shifts. The modulation in his voice is good. Yeah, so that's just me playing with language. You can ignore that line if you want to. Sorry, sometimes I just get into it and I just want to play with it.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So this is that was very nice. You should apologize. So I want to mark in the conversation with the word now that there's a time element going on. So David frowned, clenched his jaw. He could feel the beast wanting to respond. Roxanne, Gabrielle interjected. The redhead turns toward her friend, and shrugs. What? That wasn't very nice. And I want to add that now you should apologize because, like, a couple seconds earlier, she was telling David he should apologize. So just to
Okay.
mark that that is on purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Okay. Now I get it.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure with your notes, but now that you explain it, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that because so there's times where we repeat things on purpose in the text. And if we don't, and we might, as the writer, be repeating them on purpose. But if we don't cue the reader in, a lot of times the reader is going to be like, this writer's an idiot. He repeats himself and he doesn't know. You're like, no, I do know. I did it on purpose. It's part of the flow. But using a word like now, you should apologize, just lets the writer know, like wink and a nod, like, yeah, I know we're talking about apologies. Everybody's apologizing. I get it. Right. Like, so it's just a way to be like, hey, you and me, reader, we're on the same page. You can trust me that I know what I'm doing. Right. Like,
Okay.
so yeah,
Okay.
just, yeah, trying to catch those moments where readers are going to be like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Like, no, I know exactly what I'm doing. Yeah. Anyway, here's another one where I want to emphasize the emotion. It's another emotional shift. So I'm just going to add a little body language. Where do you think you're going? He continued walking. Again, nice job of using his physical body language as his utterance
Yeah.
in the exchange. So where do you think you're going? He continued walking. I'm talking to you, she insisted, raising her voice. From the corner of his eye, he saw the gargoyle turn its head. So I just want to add a little like 4 words there and stomping her foot. I'm talking to you, she insisted, raising her voice and stomping her foot. Right? Like giving me that visualization of what's
Yeah.
happening, not just the audio, because it enhances the reader's emotional experience. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It makes it way more visual.
Yeah. So you can see though, I'm not your dialogue, your back and forth is great. What we're doing is we're taking the emotions that you already have in the text and we're finding the places where there's this emotional moments, emotional shifts, and we're like gonna lean into those a little bit.
Enhancing them.
Yeah. So here you have a moment where things change. From the corner of his eye, saw the gargoyle turn his head. Don't, he said, pointing a menacing finger at the stone angel, who resumed his position. Don't what? She said as she was walking to her. Oh, as he was walking to her. David turned
Assuming.
around. Oh, sorry, assuming he was talking. So,
Yeah.
man. Don't what? She said, assuming he was talking to her.
Yeah.
It's written very well. I just can't read tonight.
That's
Dave,
okay.
yeah, David turned around and walked back toward her. Don't yell at me. And please explain what you're mad about. I'm an idiot. I'm slow. So he's making an intentional turn toward patience here, right? Like he's trying to slow things down.
Yeah.
Don't, you have dot, 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 which tells me that he's like catching himself. Don't
Yeah.
yell at me.
Because the don't was toward the gargoyle that he didn't want the gargoyle
Oh,
to.
see, I didn't catch that. I thought it was
Yeah.
all toward her.
No. It was at the gargoyle. He
Okay.
didn't want the gargoyle to jump out and attack Roxanne. So he pointed to the gargoyle and
Okay.
said, "Don't."
Okay. Then you got to lay that out for me.
Okay.
Right. David turned around and walked back toward her. Pointing at the gargoyle, he said, don't.
Well, that's
Period.
on top. The first time he says "don't."
Yeah, no, I'm talking about down here. Don't dot dot dot. Who's
Okay.
that don't for?
Well, that's for her. He's trying to use that word that he said, and
Yeah, he's replaying the word.
yeah, because
Yeah.
she doesn't know the gargoyle is
Yeah, she
alive.
doesn't see it. Yeah, so
No, she doesn't see it. She doesn't know.
What are you doing with these 3 dots?
He's just trying to figure out what he's going to say.
Yeah, so that's you and I are on the same page.
Okay.
He's like, don't, and then he's catching himself for a minute, gathering thoughts, and he's
Yell
like,
at me.
yell at me. And so there's an intentional like I'm slowing down.
Yeah.
in his presentation. So in order to give me that, like, it helped me feel that I'm slowing down, let's add some prose in here and physically slow it down.
Okay.
Right. So David turned and walked back toward her. Don't ... yell at me. Period. End of quotation marks. The cemetery was getting darker, or a mist was flowing into the cemetery. The gargoyle had settled. The three women looked back at him, confused. And please explain what you're mad about, he said with a sigh. I'm an idiot. I'm slow. Right. So adding that prose, slowing against that rabbit speed, right? Like slowing it down for a minute because we're
Yeah.
about to take off again, right? Like, so
Yep.
like pulling it back and slowing down. And then you already do it here with Roxanne. Roxanne stepped in closer and rested her fists on her hips. You were shot in the bathroom. It looks like a crime scene. You're hallucinating. And then you ran out of the room, locking us in, right? Like she makes her case for like, this
Yeah.
is, but then we're back to the races. She was worried about you, Gabrielle said softly. We all were. David's eyes softened a little bit. Goddamn right we're worried, but that's not why I'm pissed. And then we're back into like anger rush. So if you give me those couple phrases of prose here, couple sentences of prose, and then using it to describe what he's seeing around him as he like slows down, it's going to make it feel slow to the
Okay.
reader, and it's going to pull them into that emotional moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does.
Here I just want to know his state of mind. David's eyes softened a little bit. Why? Right? David's eyes softened a little bit,
Yeah.
realizing that what he had done was probably extreme.
No, it's more that people cared about him.
Yeah. Oh, great.
David's core wound is that he's been living with his mother on the run
Yeah.
and never made any friends. He's alone with his mother. Now his mother was murdered and he's alone. So
Yeah.
his core wound is that he's insignificant. He would die and nobody would care.
Yeah.
And
So,
now somebody cares.
yeah. So this is perfect. David saw in their face genuine affection and his eyes softened a little.
Okay.
Right? Like you're giving me like his reaction to what he's seeing, and
Yeah.
it enhances the emotional experience for me as the reader to like let me into his psyche a little bit more. You
Okay.
don't need like 3 sentences. You just need those like 5 words, right? Like David saw the genuine affection on their face and his eyes softened a little bit, right? Like, but now you're giving me the like, you're enhancing my experience because you're letting me inside his inner
Psyche.
thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is the only place in this 8-page, like big 5-person conversation. This is the only place where I don't know who's talking, which by the way, master stroke. I'm really impressed that you got through 8 pages and the whole time I knew everybody was talking. Now I can assume who's talking here.
Yeah, because we're talking about the prison.
We're talking about the prison.
Remember,
Yeah.
2 podcasts ago,
Mm-hmm.
we talked about the underground prison where she
Yeah.
was
She was
held.
locked up. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is a few hours later. It's
Yeah.
about what 4 scenes later
Yeah.
because they escape. He has to remove the bullet from his leg,
Yeah.
and then he has to save the fairy that was trying to save him.
Yep.
So he runs to the cemetery where he knows other fairies
Yeah.
are, and he gets in a fight with the tree,
Yeah.
and then the girls arrive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a question of hours.
Yeah. And I think this line, I don't want you to tell me like Roxanne said.
Okay.
I want you to give me something that shows me she's escalating again.
Okay.
Shh, Megan said again, as if she were watching a soap opera. Roxanne glared at her and then turned back to David. You told your mutt to lock us in a room like it was a prison, right? Like adding that little 1 sentence there
Okay.
tells the reader, hey, we're ramping back up here, right? Like
Yeah, and
Roxanne's taking
this,
back control of the conversation.
yeah,
Yeah.
and this is Roxanne's core wound.
Okay.
You know, her father is in the military, and we're going to see him in a few chapters later. And he's a general in the Canadian Army, a really tough dude.
Yeah.
And David is really scared of this guy.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah.
And you know, he's really tough. And Roxanne always feels that she's not up to the fight.
Yeah.
And she needs to prove that she can take care of herself because her father is always there to protect her.
Nice. So in that next line, she just expresses the core, like what she's fighting to fix.
We see just
Yeah.
like two lines
That like
later.
we can take care of ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So if you give me here that sentence before she speaks about her glaring at um Gabrielle and Megan to tell them to be quiet and then turning back to David, then you don't need to mark who's speaking here because
Okay.
I know we're back and forth between her and David. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big scene, but
Mhm.
Meg and Gabby are only there,
Yeah, they're kind of side
as
players.
yes, side
Yeah.
characters,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. This is a really great build here. From so earlier you had him, David said between clenched teeth, and then a couple lines later, his jaw was as tight as his fists. That's a nice emotional build. And I just wanted to point out, you did a great job
Okay.
like giving me that like slow build to his anger, which you're not getting out, he told the beast, which is it's just a nice, yeah, build there. You did a good job with that.
Thanks.
Um, I don't know why this felt like it needed one more beat. No, she interjected. If a but follows an apology, then you're not really sorry. I am, but there it is again. Or you had there you go again. I just had there
Yeah,
it is again.
sure.
Roxanne, let me finish, please. And I wanted another beat there. I don't know why.
Okay.
Roxanne, let me finish. Why should I? Please. I don't know what the difference is in adding that extra beat there, but I don't know. It sounded like it needed it to my ear. You can
Sure.
completely ignore that if you don't like it.
Oh, sure.
Okay, here we have another change in like we have another pause in the conversation where we need to utilize that rabbit speed and slow down for a second before we speed up. He yells, "Please." She crossed her arms over her chest and looked at him fiercely. And then he's going to be like, "I'm truly sorry that I worried you and the girls. However," he added, choosing his words carefully, Roxanne pucked her eyebrows. So she's gone from being in this fight with him to going silent in these next couple lines because
Yeah.
there's been an emotional shift, right? So just give me a couple sentences here. Please. Meg and Gabrielle both stood hushed next to Roxanne. Roxanne crossed her arms over her chest and looked at him fiercely. Right? Like just giving me that extra sentence of like, here's where the other girls are. Here's, you could even include the dog in here too if you wanted to, right? Like, the dog gave off a slow whine. Roxanne
Okay.
crossed her chest, her arms over her chest and looked at him fiercely, right? Like, but just slowing down for a couple sentences to make it feel slower and heavier to the reader because there's more prose there, and then jumping back into his apology emphasizes the fact that he's trying to slow everything down again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and he's trying to control the beast.
Yeah, and trying to reason with her at the same time, right?
Yeah,
Like he's
exactly.
almost got two beasts. He's got Roxanne and
Yeah.
his inner beast that he's dealing with.
Yeah,
So he's trying to
exactly.
like balance both of them out. Yeah. Um, I felt like her apologizing here, especially since they've been talking about apologies, is
Yeah.
too much of a treat. I want you to pull it out. So he says, actually, no, first of all, Tank isn't a mutt. He's my friend, and I won't tolerate anyone insulting him, not even you. You had fine. I'm sorry, she said in a defiant tone. What else? The I'm sorry feels like she's like acquiescing to him too much.
Yeah, but it
So
wasn't a real I'm sorry. It
well
was
then
like a bitchy I'm sorry,
okay, then you got to give me physical characterization to show me that that's going
Okay.
on.
Okay.
I'm sorry, she said, in a defiant tone, rolling her eyes, right? Like that's my go-to for like, I don't actually mean it, but
Okay.
some kind of body language that's like, I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah.
yeah, to put it in there just so I know, like, again, so that like you're letting the reader into the uh, imaginary projection of the scene in your mind, right? Like you're creating that bridge between your mind and the reader.
Yeah,
Make
yeah,
sure it's easy for the reader to walk across,
yeah,
while at the same time, the trick is making sure it's easy for the reader to walk across while not making it so exhaustingly tedious with your descriptions that the reader's like, oh, how long do I have to walk across this bridge? Right? Like,
yeah.
so I just want to be free. That's the reader saying, I just want to be free to read your stuff. So but that's you are definitely not doing that. So yeah, if you're gonna keep the I'm sorry, give me a little more besides in a defiant tone to let me know that it's sarcastic and she doesn't mean it.
Okay.
um I wasn't sure what he was feeling here. He stopped dead in his tracks and took a second to choke the beast's aggressive voice, demanding to be released before turning back to her. He said in a calm but assertive voice as he stared her down, "Yeah, my mother." So
Yeah,
I think I think I'm just missing context. I think that's part of what's happening here. Does
yeah.
she understand his history with his mother?
Yeah, that his mother was murdered in front of him about
Okay,
like 3 weeks ago.
gotcha.
So it was. You probably haven't read that scene
Yeah,
yet.
so then just
So
ignore
yeah,
my comment here because I think I'm just mixing context. I was like, why are we
yeah.
talking about
So
his mom? Yeah, so I
no,
if she
and
knows, then I get it.
yeah, a few exchanges on top over that. She says, like, who died and made you in charge? And then she continues talking.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah,
for
yeah.
him, that's where the beast really like wants to come out.
Yeah, and I got the beast. You did a good job pulling like him feeling the beast and coming back. I wasn't getting the revelation from my mother, but I'm also just pulling a chapter out of a larger story. So
Yeah.
yeah, if I trust, and actually this makes sense. If she understands what happened to his mother,
Oh yeah.
this next note where I said I'm missing the revelation here, it actually makes sense if she's connected to that. So
Yeah, she is.
ignore those two notes.
So, and I'm trying on top when she says that to hide it in the rest of the text. Like we're big girls, we're able to protect ourselves and things like
Yeah,
that. So I'm just trying to put that phrase in, like, who died and made you in charge,
yeah.
to hide it, so the readers will not like jump on it right away
Yeah, no, it's a
because it
good.
gets like too fast.
Yeah, no, it feels just part of the conversation, even though
Yeah,
you're hitting a big theme there, which is nice.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah. Um, okay, so here I need all three girls' responses. This is another place where we have a big tonal shift,
yeah,
right? Come on, Tank, let's go. She was paralyzed, unsure of what to do or say, realizing how wrong she'd been about his motives. He was hurt in more ways than one, and she had been stabbing at him for at least a few minutes of creative wounds. So here you're doing what I want you to do above. You're slowing everything down with a couple sentences of prose
yeah,
because we're at that big emotional shift. So you're applying that rabbit speed here, which is great. I'm sorry, she said timidly. He walked past the girls. David, please, which I'm assuming is still her
yeah.
because you haven't indicated it's somebody else. He
No,
continued walking. David, she insisted. So he's walking by all three of them, but we don't get any indication as to what Gabrielle and Meg are doing here. This is a place where I want the whole cast participating,
yeah,
right?
makes
So
sense. Yeah,
because we're in this big emotional turn. We're about to start a new segment. They're actually going to break off into new pairs. So remind me of where everybody is and everything that's going on, right? Like, so I'm sorry, Roxanne said timidly. He walked past the girls. David, come on, Gabby said. David, Megan begged. He continued walking. David, Roxanne insisted, right? Like, so just getting all of them to participate here,
yeah,
reminding me that they're all three here. Yeah. Um, I don't think you need this. He walked another 10 meters. I
yeah,
think if you get all the girls talking here, we get the sense that he's walking away, and you can just
yeah,
go with he stopped and looked over his shoulder. Um, I might give another beat there to give us a like insight into what's stopping him. He stopped and looked over his shoulder. I might give him like just give me some insight into his brain here, right? He knew he couldn't, he could hear in their voices how much they actually cared about him, and
Yeah.
he didn't want to walk away from these relationships. He stopped and looked over his shoulder, right? Like just giving me some
Mm,
insight into his motivations here for
yeah.
stopping and looking
Yeah.
back. Mostly because this is character growth, right? Like we're
Yes.
talking about an isolated character who's building friendships for the first time.
Yep.
So let's rest in that character growth a little bit and give me insight into what's going on in his brain as he does it. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, here's another big emotional turn. Roxanne hesitated. Was that for all of us or just them? She sheepishly asked. Do you think I would leave you alone in a creepy cemetery? I might be an idiot, but I care about you. Right? That's a big, big declaration that I
Yep.
care about you. I shouldn't have called you that. I'm sorry. So slow down here, but I cared about you. Give me her body language. Have her look around the cemetery a little bit. Make this a slower rollout to where she's like, I shouldn't have called you that. I'm sorry, David. He ignored her and smiled inwardly. The beast was tamed. But so, do you see what I'm saying here about like, I want a little bit more from her?
Yeah.
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 Because it's a big confession moment, right? Like,
Yes.
and this is the end of the fight, right? Like, they're not fighting anymore after this.
No. No.
So,
Exactly.
yeah. So, hit me with that big confession moment. Give me that like emotional pop where, like, when this becomes a movie, this is where the strings will play.
Yeah.
And she'll be like,
Exactly.
I'm sorry, right? Like, so if you want to visualize it that way, like, where's the soundtrack going to swell? That's where you want to slow down with a little bit of prose to make me sit in it.
I I really like that.
Okay, good.
The
Well,
way you're putting it there, with the
yeah,
the music and everything. Yeah, I
yeah,
could see it because for me, this is a movie in my head.
yeah. Well, I could. It's a very, very character interaction driven, visual story, and so it makes sense that you would be writing it as a movie in your head, which I think is a great technique. So yeah, so whenever you hear strings raising, know that you got to slow down in the prose to make us to keep the camera on them longer, right?
This is great, Jeff. It
Good.
helps me a lot.
Oh, I've got it. Okay. Here again, I'm adding body language. He snorted a laugh. He says, yeah, right. I need to interpret that, yeah, right. So I have him snorting a laugh, but whatever you want to interpret that, yeah, right. Give me his body language.
Okay.
Um, this is a terrible, this is a terrible line.
Yeah. I laughed when I looked at it first
Oh, it's
at the
the
first
worst.
time, and then I saw your comments. Don't use this. This is bad. And I said, okay, I agree with
Oh,
that. It is
yeah.
bad.
I was editing and I was like, this
but
is just
but I
terrible.
get it.
So, yeah. So you have David looked at her dumbfounded. I want that dumbfounded explained.
Okay.
What is it that's dumbfounding him? Dave, because there's like 15 things happening right now that could be dumbfounding him. David looked at her dumbfounded. What is what you wrote? So I added
Yeah.
this stupid line of the idea was as foreign to him as German strudel, which is it's a terrible line.
Well,
But
I was wondering if it was because of my name that you used that.
no, not at all.
No, not at all. Okay.
I was editing while I was eating breakfast.
Okay.
So
Okay.
and I was like, as foreign to him as what? As foreign to him as what?
Yeah, as
Strudel.
my German name or
German
as my
strudel.
French accent,
No, yeah. Anyway, but it's a
Maybe
terrible example.
croissant, or
Yeah,
something.
but you get the point. I want to
Yeah, I
hit
do.
that dumbfounded a little bit harder. So give me something there that hits that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we get real emotional, we tend to repeat words. That's just something we do.
Okay.
So I wanted here. That wasn't my intent. I only wanted her, ... all of you to be safe. Right? Because it's a slow and emotional, I'm gonna add those couple more words. That wasn't my intent. I only wanted her. I wanted all of you to be safe. Right? Like
Okay.
rephrasing that I wanted. It's not necessary grammatically. It's actually probably if you were writing like a scientific paper, they'd be like, don't put that twice. But because it's dialogue and we're writing this emotional thing, this is something we do
Yeah.
we just repeat for emphasis. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, here you use her name twice, Gabby.
Yeah, I'll remove it from the first part.
Okay.
It's more
Yeah,
important on the second part.
it is. Yeah. And you know this, but whenever we use somebody's name, I'm saying it for anybody listening. Whenever we use somebody's name, it brings weight to what we're saying.
Yeah.
Eric, it's really important that you pick one time to use this name, right? Like you can see when I said the word Eric, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, he's calling me out. So Gabby, she would have to lower herself so much to be equal to me. Gabby, are you flirting with me? So like you just got to pick one. I do think
Yeah.
you're right. I think it's more important than the bottom one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Um,
it creates like a relationship between
yeah, it's a
Gabby
connecting.
and exactly they're
Yeah.
connecting, and we're gonna see later on she's gonna be like his kid sister or something.
Yeah, she's got a little sister vibe starting here.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's starting there. Exactly.
Yeah, you do this nice thing where where he's been fighting with Roxanne and Gabby and Megan have been quiet, and then they start walking again, and he walks with Gabby and has a conversation with her, and Megan and Roxanne stand in the back, and it's a nice kind of adjustment of who they're talking to. It's a really nice technique when you're trying to break up a big cast scene to like push some of them out and have private conversations in the middle of the scene is nice. And you did a really great job with it. Here, instead of this paragraph break
Yeah,
where you've just spaced down because he's transitioning, you're moving from Gabby and him talking to Mag and Roxanne talking.
yeah.
Instead of spacing down, give me 3 sentences of description of what's going on.
Okay.
Talk to me about the cemetery. Talk to me about how it smells. Talk to me about how that smell is impacting Roxanne, right? Like, or talk to me about how the visual is impacting Roxanne. Is she scared? Is she nervous? Does she think it's actually beautiful now that all the drama has stopped down? Does she find it serene and calming, right? Like, give me 3 sentences here about how the visuals around Roxanne are impacting her. That'll
Yeah,
help you make this quick. You're doing a very small shift of POV here
yeah.
where you're actually shifting to Roxanne's POV. It's very natural. It's done well. I wouldn't change it, but I would give me those instead of the space down, give me 3 sentences of like how
Pros.
Roxanne feels about where she is of
Yeah,
pros. And
yeah.
that'll create a very natural, fluid transition into this next part of the scene.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, Here's another place where I want to know how she's feeling more. So I want some more body language and potentially even an internal thought a little bit. He probably needs it more than me right now. How stupid was that? Who died? Megan grabbed Roxanne's arm. Come on, Roxy. Don't blame yourself. He had it coming. So to this like line that Roxy's saying where she's having this like emotional revelation. She's not having a factual revelation. She knows all these facts.
Yeah.
She's having this like emotional connection. Give me some body language for her, right? Like,
Okay.
does she cross her arms across her chest to like protect herself? Is she putting her hands in her pockets and looking down in shame? Is she like looking up? Like, what did I do? Like,
Yeah, I think it's
you
more like
know,
looking up,
yeah.
like
Or is
grabbing
it
her
like,
head, looking up. Yeah.
yeah. So just give me something to kind of interpret what's happening.
Yeah,
Um,
because she can't believe what she said. It just came out, and
yeah.
she didn't realize, that her mother was murdered, that his mother was murdered 3 weeks before.
Yeah, perfect. So just give
Yeah,
me a little hint there.
yeah,
And again, here too, Megan grabbed Roxy's arm. Come on, Roxy, don't blame yourself. He had it coming. I should be more careful with my words. I didn't want to hurt him. Right. So you've got Megan grabbing Roxy's arm, which is nice because she's like trying to pull her to herself, trying to like, it's that physical, I'm trying to get a hold on you. Tell me how Roxanne responds to that.
okay,
Right. Give me her because it's part of the physicality is part of their give and take. So
yeah,
keep that physicality rolling in this next utterance for her so that I can visualize what's happening between the two women.
okay,
Um, and then here too, I want to create a little bit more space, right? Wait, no, that's the one. No, right here.
yeah,
Guys, can't live with them, can't live without them. Well, at least the first part is true. Give me a laugh. Give me a like she nudges Roxanne At least the first part is true, right? Like, give me something to break up this utterance so that we push those two beats of what she's saying a little farther apart from each other. So, guys, can't live with them, can't live without them, she said, as she nudged Roxy with her elbow, right? Well, at least the
Okay.
first part is true, right?
Yeah.
Like, can't live with them. So it's that, like, I'm
Yeah,
telling you, I'm
and
going to
I'm
pause on the joke a little bit.
yeah, and I'm trying to hint here that um, Megan is probably bisexual or lesbian, and
Okay,
she likes Roxanne a lot,
gotcha.
but I'm trying to give a few hints there.
Then you definitely need to make it more. She needs to be more hands-on.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I would definitely have her, like, put her arm around her here or something like that to make it a little more intimate.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, here again we have another segment change. They're switching places. She caught up with David and Gabrielle,
Yeah.
right? In that switching of places, slow down and describe for me where they're walking and what's happening around them. And how David feels about it, because you're actually switching to David's POV here.
Yes.
So acknowledge that switch with like two sentences of what David's seeing and how he feels about what he's seeing. They're almost out of the cemetery. It feels really good to be out of here. That he knows this isn't safe. He's got to get them somewhere. He looks to the end of the cemetery and he can see that they're moving to the street. He's going to have to figure out what to do soon. Something like that, that like lets me know, like, hey, we're back in David. We're back in David's headspace.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, like, what's happening around David and how he feels about what's happening around him. Yeah. I got a little confused here. David has two in a row. I think you just need to give somebody something. So, okay, I was mad. I'm sorry, but I didn't mean it. Sorry, I didn't mean it as a lie. I just didn't.
And
What did
that's
you?
Roxanne.
Yeah, that's Roxanne. And then he says, what did you say? She says, it wasn't really a lie.
Yeah.
No, the part where you said you were sorry, but,
That's
well, I
David.
mean that, he laughed out loud. You're making fun of me. So I would just ditch that. I mean that, because that's where I got lost. I was like, wait, is she like correcting herself, or so I
Yeah.
just go straight with the like he laughed out loud, because we know this is when he laughs out loud, I'm like, oh, they're talking about the joke from before. So I would just leave the he laughed out loud. Does that make sense?
Okay. It
And
does.
cut that piece.
So
Yeah,
so
just
so it has to be like directly after the you said, you're sorry,
yeah,
but
sorry, but he laughed out loud, right? Like, because
yeah.
those are actually
Okay.
together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, it sounds like he's laughing out loud at her saying, well, I mean that.
Okay.
And the he laughed out loud standing alone becomes a little cruel.
Okay.
So you got to pair it with what he said. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was all great. Again, here I want to feel the silence between them. They walk for a few minutes in silence. Roxanne noticed that David had seemed to be struggling with something. So tell me what that walk in silence is like. They walked a few minutes in silence. They're the only sound, their feet treading in the grass. Right. Roxanne felt the cold breeze on her face and looked over at David. He seemed to be looking down. Right. Like so just slow down here for me and make me feel them walking in silence a little
Okay.
bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Roxanne grabbed his hand. It's a big moment, man.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. How does he feel about it? What's his
Yep.
response? Right.
Yep.
They've been talking. We've got this, like, Gabby talks to him about how Roxanne has feelings for him. Roxanne catches up with them. They're having this very intimate conversation. And then she reaches out and grabs his hand. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
So we need to know how he feels about that happening. Does he pull away? Does he squeeze her hand? Does he feel nervous and he gets, jittery? Like, what is his emotional response to what's happening, and how is that emotional response displayed physically?
Okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah, because you made this a big thing, where she's like, no, I'm sorry, but
Yeah, yeah,
I just keep the word but away from her completely. Because
makes sense.
otherwise he's gonna say it every time she says but. He's gonna be like,
Yeah,
but. So I just leave
yeah,
it out.
yeah,
Yeah. Um, I want more physical interaction here because again, we're getting more intimate. Roxanne was looking for a way out of this conversation. Okay, girls, why don't you come and join us up here? She said as they exited the cemetery. So, like, I'd have her, or right here especially. But if I did hold my breath, I guess you'd have to give me mouth to mouth, right? As a friend, I mean, it might be worth it. David, right? Like, have her push him, have her like shove him again, like giving that like intimate connection through physical touch
yeah,
is gonna help build the emotional moment of this. And then here too, having her like lean back into him, having her like, move closer to him again, even though she's looking for a way out of the conversation, to contrast her wanting to get out of the conversation with her emotional state toward him.
yeah,
Yeah. But using that body language as a way to like cue in the reader to like, hey, she's saying this, but she actually feels Y. Like she's saying X, but she feels Y here.
yeah.
Yeah. Um,
And that's part of her growth, where
mm,
everything is black and white to her,
gotcha.
and she has to find some gray areas.
Okay.
Not everything in life is black and white.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And I think that's a good growth moment for her. So here, that kind of like leaning into it emotionally and pushing back from it physically, I think would be a good display of that here.
Yeah.
Um, okay, he says he makes this revelation, it's Kowalski. Is he discovering that for the first time, or does
No,
he know that?
he knows that,
Okay.
and he's informing the two other girls.
Okay.
Megan and Gabby.
Gotcha. So it's very flat the way he says it. It's
Yeah.
Kowalski, David answered. And I was like, wait, did he just come to that knowledge? If he just came to that knowledge, we need to make a big deal out of it. But
Yeah.
if he's just like like, yeah, I know this already, then it reads fine. You can ignore
Yeah,
my
but
note.
but actually, in the book, that's a red herring. So
Well, we already did that scene. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
not her.
Yeah.
But
Um,
yeah,
all right, man. Well, those were all my notes. So I think it reads great, but like leaning in with that body language in emotional moments to like help us translate the emotion, and then using that rabbit speed to like slow down at the end of segments and in emotional transitions whenever you feel the music swell. Give us those
yeah,
pros
yeah,
to like get it slowing down some so that we can actually sit in the moment a little bit. It's funny in a screenplay. I mean, I've never written a screenplay, but hearing people talk about them, what I understand is that, when you want things to slow down, you have to take up more space on the page because each page is X amount of time of film.
yeah,
So, you can kind of think of it here in the same way. You got to take up more space on the page if you want us to like slow down in a moment.
yeah.
Yeah. I actually don't know. People who write screenplays are listening to this right now, and they're like, Jeff, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said. So if that's I don't write screenplays, I write novels. So that's the truth, and just ignore my advice. Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about with it?
No,
All
listen,
right.
this is great, man. You're
Good, man. I'm
helping me
glad.
so much.
Good. I'm really glad.
I've been working on this for like a year and a half now,
Yeah.
and you've been helping me so much.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
You
Well,
know,
I'm excited for the book to come
a-
out. It's going to be really great.
and our one-on-one conversations are helping me, and all of the conversations that you have with the other dialoguers.
Oh, yeah.
I'm listening to everything with everyone else. Tom and everybody,
Yeah.
and I learn so much.
Oh, thanks, man.
Man, this is great.
That makes me really
You're
happy.
helping the community so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, y'all help me too. So
Yeah,
it's a give and take. All right, I'm gonna hit stop and we can talk a little bit more.
great. Thanks, man.